My name is Paris. This year, I finally turned 40. Back in my 20s, I met my husband Damon, who was a contractor at my workplace, and we got married. We've had a comfortable life ever since, thanks to my husband's hard work over the years. Let me tell you about the time we struggled the most, right after we got married. I was born as the granddaughter of a landowner in a small town in Washington state. Although my grandfather was a landowner, he's not that impressive. But I did enjoy a fairly comfortable upbringing. As I grew older, I felt like I couldn't become a self-sufficient adult if I kept relying on my family's wealth, so I chose to work for a company in Boston. Determined to be independent, I moved to Boston. I didn't tell my husband that I was a landowner's granddaughter until we decided to get married. The reason was simple. I didn't think it was necessary. I was living off my own salary without relying on my family's money. So when my husband came to visit my family home, he was surprised by its size, but didn't make a big deal about it. I felt reassured that his attitude didn't change after learning about my background, and decided to go ahead with the marriage. Had he changed his behavior, I might have called off the wedding, suspecting he was after my family's money. One day, as we were discussing our upcoming wedding, my grandfather suddenly passed away. Since we were already engaged, my husband and mother-in-law attended the funeral. My mother-in-law suddenly said, "Isn't that Congressman Mr. Douglas?" She was referring to a politician my grandfather had been friendly with. Even though we were small-scale landowners, we had some connections in political and business circles. Impressive you noticed. Excuse me for a moment, I'll go say hello. I walked over to greet Mr. Douglas, but I couldn't shake the feeling that my mother-in-law was watching me intently, even from a distance. After the mourning period for my grandfather ended, we got married. We were enjoying the sweet atmosphere of newlywed life when something happened. "Paris, are you home?" During the daytime, when my husband wasn't around, the doorbell rang. It was my mother-in-law, and I was caught completely off guard by her sudden visit. Mother-in-law? Just a second! Let me get the door! As I scrambled to open the door, mother-in-law says with a smile, "Sorry for the surprise. Just wanted to see how you're doing." I apologize while trying to fix my disheveled hair. "I'm sorry for the way I look." "Mother-in-law, Damon's not here today. He's at work." "That's fine. I actually came to talk to you. Just wanted to make sure Damon's not causing any trouble." Mother-in-law asks various questions, like how my life with her son is going, and if I'm facing any challenges. I'm relieved for a moment, glad that mother-in-law is understanding. But then she sips her coffee, straightens her posture, and says, "By the way, I heard from Damon that your family in Paris owns land? I didn't expect such a question out of the blue." Still thinking it's just small talk, I answer, No, it's not like that. My grandfather just owns a little land. It's not a big deal." Mother-in-law smiles and asks, "But your family's well off, right?" Something about this makes me uneasy. I manage to keep a smile and play it off. As I suspected, the conversation shifts to awkward topics like my income and whether I'm getting any financial help from my family. From then on, mother-in-law starts visiting our home whenever Damon is not around. She'll look around and always say, "You should ask your parents for help." This happens especially when the house is a bit untidy or after she's taken a peek in the refrigerator. I can tell she's implying, "Why don't you hire a housekeeper?" Or, "You should ask for grocery money." Not wanting to argue, I brush it off each time with a laugh. Then one day, I noticed my card holder was missing. It was a small branded gift from my mom when I got my job. I'm not fond of expensive things, but I remember Mom saying, "Let me do this much for you." And I treasured it, even though it was a bit worn out. I searched everywhere, drawers, bags, but couldn't find it. So casually, I asked mother-in-law, who sometimes helps with cleaning, "Have you seen a yellow card holder?" I thought she might know because she sometimes helps me clean our house. What she says next is completely unexpected. "Oh, that? It was so lovely, I took it." I couldn't believe what was happening. Taking other people's things without asking? Is that acceptable now? I briefly wondered if I'd missed some new custom, but no, that can't be it. Great souvenir. Thanks! Why am I being thanked for something I never gave? I was so shocked I couldn't find the words. That's actually something special my mom gave me, so I can't just give it away. There's a lot I want to say, but I stick to the bare minimum to make my point, not wanting to escalate things. I try hard to calm my racing heart and muster some semblance of respect, because after all, she's my mother-in-law. Oh, really? That's too bad. I really liked it. Fine. Here, it's back. Now give me something else. Wow, I'm stumped. I couldn't believe it. I really wanted that card holder back, so I exchanged it for some organic tomatoes we'd gotten from a neighbor. She seemed unhappy with the tomatoes at first, but once I explained they were organically grown and hard to find in stores, she seemed satisfied. But it got me thinking. All those times she'd come over to help tidy up, she was actually snooping for valuables. She practically knows the contents of our entire house, and it gave me the creeps. I thought she was strange, but I hoped this would be the end of it. I decided to keep this whole ordeal to myself, so I never told my husband. But then, she showed up again, not long after the incident. The nerve of her to come back after all that. Although I reined in my annoyance, remembering she is my mother-in-law after all. Paris, let's go out for lunch today. I know a delicious place. She invited me out, which was unusual, so I had a glimmer of hope that maybe she was going to apologize for last time. But the reality was quite the opposite. As we were leaving the restaurant after an enjoyable lunch, "Oh no, I forgot my wallet! Paris, can you cover for me?" she said. To be honest, given the previous incident, I had a bad feeling about this, but I couldn't just not pay, so I reluctantly covered the whole bill. "Thank you, Paris." Just as I expected, the money never came back. Since then, my mother-in-law often invited me to lunch, conveniently forgetting her wallet each time. I was left with no choice but to pick up the tab. She also never stopped taking things from her home. It got worse every day. "So, what's the gift for today?" she would ask. Out of sheer necessity, I started preparing extra groceries and snacks to give to her. It was better than her taking things without asking, but it still felt awful. The more this went on, the harder it became to talk to my husband about it. I worried how he'd feel if he knew his mother was acting this way. But constantly supplying these gifts started to strain our finances too. It bothered me that our hard-earned money was dwindling. Finally, I found a way to cope. I started working a part-time job, giving me less time to spend with my mother-in-law. And it worked. I had significantly fewer encounters with her. Maybe I should have done this from the start. Now I only had to deal with her during summer vacations and Christmas visits, which made life much easier. But when we visited her for the summer vacation, after a long time, her bad habits re-emerged. She'd only make comments like, "How have you been with your family lately?" Or, "That's a nice watch you're wearing," when my husband was away. Though I had some financial flexibility because of my part-time job, my watch was nothing special. As for my relationship with my family, it was the same as always. She had one reason for asking these questions. I realized from my long experience with her. She was fishing to see if she could get something more. "Hey, sister-in-law! Long time no see. Got any gifts?" Just when I was getting fed up with my mother-in-law, up popped my jobless, live-at-home sister-in-law, Madeline. "I've brought some snacks. Feel free to have some," I said with a smile. That's when my sister-in-law said something outrageous. "No, not like that. Your family is rich, right? Don't you have something better, like a designer bag?" She wanted a designer bag as a casual gift? I was speechless, just like when my mother-in-law had made her ridiculous demands. "I'm sorry for not being more thoughtful," I said, brushing it off. I have so much I want to say, but I don't want to stir up trouble during a short 2-night visit. "Seriously? Make sure you bring gifts next time." My sister-in-law retreated to her room, laughing as if she were in the right. She's only a few years younger than me, and her outrageous comments and actions are infuriating. But I keep my cool, reminding myself that I married into this family. Yet, the lack of gifts seemed to have hardened my sister-in-law and mother-in-law against me. I realized this while helping with household chores. "You're washing those dishes wrong. You're using too much soap and wasting water," griped my mother-in-law. Confused, I was taken aback. I wash dishes like anyone else, and it's the same way I do it at the restaurant, where I work part-time. If anything, I think I'm more careful here. "Well, you're from a well-off family, so I guess you're not used to household chores," she chuckled. Here I am, washing a mountain of dirty dishes she'd left, and she's saying I don't do housework? The audacity. I wanted to voice my displeasure, but I held it in. "Well, it's done now. Just pay for the soap and water later," she said. With that, she left all the chores to me and went off to watch TV. My sister-in-law was no better, demanding an allowance from me. I have no obligation to give money to an adult woman who's only 3 years younger than me. I tried to laugh it off, but she was persistent. She even opened the bathroom door while I was showering to say, "I'm waiting for my allowance." Even between women, this is unacceptable. Finally, I lost my patience and snapped. "I can't do that." Perhaps because she's younger, I loosened my self-control. "What? How arrogant. I'll tell Mom," she retorted, and she really did report me to our mother-in-law. Under normal circumstances, a parent would scold or be dumbfounded by such behavior, but not the woman in this family. "How could you, Paris? Don't you find Madeline adorable?" I was reprimanded. Adorable? No way. But I knew they would keep blaming me until they got money. I'll be going home tomorrow. With that thought, I ended up giving in and handed my sister-in-law some money. And so it was decided that we'd visit my in-laws again for Christmas. At that time, we had just returned from a trip to Italy for our wedding anniversary, so I thought no one would say anything more. I heard mother-in-law and father-in-law will be celebrating their 25th wedding anniversary next year, so I bought them a pair of Venetian glasses, each costing around $300 as a gift. I've had my ups and downs with mother-in-law, but I felt I could put my heart into choosing these. For my sister-in-law, I picked out a leather bag from a popular, though not famous, Italian brand. It was a little bitter meeting their demands, but our rare trip had been enjoyable, so it didn't bother me too much. In fact, during the trip, I confided everything about mother-in-law and my sister-in-law to my husband. It felt wrong to bring it up during a fun moment, but the freeing atmosphere of our trip made me spill the beans. My husband held me and said, "I'm sorry. I'm glad you talked to me. Let me know right away if something happens again." He's truly a wonderful man. I'm glad I married him. I felt so clear-headed. But my warm feelings were about to be shattered. Crash! A loud noise rang out, and startled, I rushed to the kitchen. The Venetian glasses I gifted were in pieces. "Oh, Paris! I'm so sorry! My hand slipped!" Mother-in-law was laughing as she said this. Could someone's hand really slip and break both glasses? It's a lie. She did it on purpose. I couldn't help but glare at mother-in-law. For a moment, mother-in-law hesitated, but then laughed it off. "They break so easily." "Wow, what happened? Did it break?" My sister-in-law was drawn in by the noise. "Yes, it did. It was just an accident." This is not how someone who breaks a gift within hours should act. I couldn't believe the nerve of these two, laughing non-stop in this situation. Memories of past grievances flooded back. I'd carefully chosen these gifts, thinking of mother-in-law and father-in-law. I stared at the broken glasses, my heart sinking, when my sister-in-law looked at me. "Well, if it's such a cheap thing that breaks easily, you shouldn't have bothered. If you're wealthy, bring something high-end, at least." My stepsister nodded in agreement with my mother-in-law's words. "I don't need such pathetic souvenirs." "Oh, wait a minute." Rushing back to her room, my stepsister returned with the bag I had gifted her. I was actually running out of toys for Charlie, she said, laughing as she let Charlie, the family dog, in the yard, chew on the bag. In no time, the bag was in tatters, ruined by teeth and dirt. It felt like my fond memories of Italy were torn to shreds, and tears almost filled my eyes. I won't forgive this. Fine, I'm leaving. I won't be coming back anymore, I said. Both my mother-in-law and stepsister responded with a puzzled, "Huh?" Their mouths were still smiling, so I guess they didn't get it. No worries. Let me make it clear for them. Did you hear that? I spoke into my mobile phone. Yes, I heard it all. I'm on my way. Upon hearing my husband's voice, I ended the video call. In reality, he had left me alone on purpose to gather evidence of their mistreatment. I had been updating him via WhatsApp, and upon hearing a noise, he had instructed me to start a video call. The only reason I didn't break into tears was that I had a strong ally on my side. My husband arrived and immediately asked, "What's going on here?" "My glass from Paris just accidentally broke," my mother-in-law responded. Stepsister also tried to chime in. "Charlie just decided to..." But my husband wasn't having any of it. "Don't mess around! I saw everything! What are you doing to Paris?" At that moment, the words, "doing to Paris," caught my attention, as if something had been done to him, too. "Well, you don't give us much money, do you? Paris is your wife. It's okay, right? It's her duty," my mother-in-law retorted. I was stunned. Could it be that they were mooching off my husband as well? "Mom and your bunch have always been messed up. Stop leeching money off your kids." With my husband's words, suspicion turned into certainty. Turns out, he'd been asked for money by his family for a long time, too. Before we got married, they even created debts under his name, which he ended up paying off. After marriage, the money grubbing continued. It seems he just didn't lend them anymore. I was truly shocked to find this out, but maybe he felt it wasn't necessary to tell me, just like I hadn't told him I was the grandchild of a landowner. He probably thought it was a problem only he had to deal with. Never could he have imagined that they'd target his wife. But since my parents were landowners, they now targeted me. How far will these people go to squeeze money out of others? It's disgusting. Even if they're my husband's family, they're awful. That's it! If you're going to go after Paris too, then it's a different story. My husband raised his voice. From now on, I'm cutting ties with this family. I'll sell off everything I bought, from cars to household items. You better find a new TV and fridge, quick! At this moment, my mother-in-law and sister-in-law were visibly stunned, and for good reason. The only people living in this house are my retired father-in-law on pension, my homemaker mother-in-law, and my unemployed sister-in-law. This household doesn't have the means to recover the household items if they're sold. My husband and I, who work hard outside and earn our own money, must have been seen as reliable support. "Let's go," said my husband, pulling my hand. We left the kitchen. But from behind, my mother-in-law and sister-in-law chased after us. "Wait! Please, don't abandon us! We won't ask Paris for gifts anymore!" At these words, my husband stopped. "Stop making basic decency sound like a favor! It's messed up to demand money and gifts in the first place!" At my husband's cold response, my mother-in-law and sister-in-law looked disheartened. Do they not understand common sense? It's almost pitiable. My husband threw them a small lifeline. "If you can write up a contract, we can reconsider." Upon hearing this, my mother-in-law and sister-in-law said, "A contract?" looking puzzled. The agreement was straightforward, meant for someone committed to working hard. No contact or communication with me when my husband isn't around, and to pay back all the money they've borrowed so far. However, mother-in-law and my sister-in-law immediately started fighting over who would get a job to meet these terms. They didn't want their stuff sold, but neither did they want to work. Seeing this, my husband whispered to me, "Let's cut them off once they've paid us back. I never said I was reconsidering cutting ties with them." I couldn't help but laugh. I completely agreed. I didn't want to be associated with these people who had nothing better to do than rely on others. After that, we never visited my husband's family home again. Over 10 years have passed. The financial state of my husband's family has been in shambles, struggling to pay rent, daily expenses, and other debts. Mother-in-law and my sister-in-law are working, sort of. But with no qualifications or solid work experience, they're stuck in low-paying jobs or in poor work environments. Given their selfish attitudes, it's no surprise they can't hold on to a job. Despite that, they don't want to give up their lavish lifestyles, so their debt keeps piling up. They keep reaching out to my husband, begging for help, but he's firmly rejected them, effectively cutting off ties. As for my husband, his diligent work has paid off, and he's climbed the corporate ladder quite impressively. I've quit my part-time job and returned to being a stay-at-home mom. We've had a child, and my husband has created an environment where I can focus solely on raising our kid. Now my life is as peaceful and fulfilling as when I lived with my parents, if not more so. I'm grateful for having such a wonderful husband. Your parents' achievements don't define you. Similarly, if your parents are terrible, it doesn't mean you'll turn out the same way. What matters most is your own character, no matter the circumstances you were raised in. I intend to keep growing, to always be that better version of myself.